Good morning, and we're back. We are very pleased to welcome Rebecca Taylor, Executive Vice President of Business Development and Programs at the National Center for Manufacturing Sciences, located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Rebecca will be speaking about cybersecurity and small manufacturing systems, and she is well qualified to discuss this topic with us. She's been a member of the Department of Homeland Security's Critical Manufacturing Sector Coordinating Council, and in this capacity, Rebecca helped DHS promote adoption and implementation of physical and cyber risk management processes, best practices, and use of innovative methods in protecting manufacturing systems. Please give Rebecca a hearty World Manufacturing Forum welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're welcome.
Thanks, and thanks to IMSI and the World Manufacturing Forum. I know that they are meeting at this very time over in Italy, and wish we could all be there as well, but happy to be here with all of you today to talk about cybersecurity in smart manufacturing. So I want to talk a little bit about NCMS, which is my organization. And there we go. Okay. So we are set up as a not-for-profit organization headquartered in Michigan that works to bring together manufacturers, small and medium-sized companies, large manufacturers, research organizations, and the federal government to collaborate. And while collaboration, is a buzzword and everybody thinks, yes, collaboration is great, we should bring everybody together, it's a lot harder when you try to bring these groups together. There's lawyers. If you're a small manufacturer, your IP is everything, and you're holding it very closely when you're sitting in a room with a large OEM. And the large OEM's lawyers are saying, hold on a minute, wait, you're going to go outside of the company to talk about our issues? So what NCMS does is bring everybody together, and we manage the hard part, the legal, the financial, the IP, and let the really innovative and smart folks get about solving the problems of manufacturing. And for us, it could be something like a very discrete problem like corrosion on an aircraft, or it could be a bigger issue like cybersecurity or supply chain risk. So we pivot to where the manufacturers need us to be. And we've been doing it for a while. We have been working as a not-for-profit for more than 30 years. We have over 500 projects executed and 4,000 different organizations in our partner network. And so what we bring is that expertise, that program management, the project management, our extensive network. So when you come to our headquarters in Michigan, there isn't any lab or facilities or research capabilities, because over the 30 years, we've pivoted from something that used to be called rapid prototyping to being a leader in large-scale 3D metal printing, additive manufacturing. So as the technology evolves, our work is done at the best place in the country for that work to be executed. So we are all across North America doing this kind of work. So today we're here, though, to talk about cybersecurity and smart manufacturing. And in today's digital world, no company in any industry can ignore the risks of cyber attacks. Cybersecurity is a must, especially for sectors like manufacturing, which traditionally has less experience in this area. And Industry 4.0, as David mentioned, bring many advantages, but companies need to be sure, as we're adopting these new capabilities, that we're also securing our manufacturing operations. So as manufacturing transforms itself and Industry 4.0 is accelerating, and factories are taking advantage of data analytics and AI and other technologies, it is an exciting time for the sector. But this technological transformation brings new risks as well. As the industry becomes more data-driven, manufacturers really must consider cybercrime. And when you think about hackers traditionally, you don't think that factories would be their targets, but they are. Our factories have important information, intellectual property, information about our employees, information about our suppliers, our customers, our costing, and all of that is very valuable to a bad actor trying to get into your organization. And the practice of cybersecurity has changed dramatically in the past few years, presenting really a big challenge to management teams. There is this convergence of OT, operational technology, with IT. And it's interesting when I go and visit with some of our member companies and you talk to the IT department and say, okay, so who's in charge of your cybersecurity for all of that equipment on the floor? And they say, well, the folks on the floor, that's their equipment. We just deal with the computer side of things. But when you get to the factory floor and you say, hey, who's protecting the cybersecurity of these machines that are connected to each other and the internet and other factories and other suppliers and customers, they point back to IT. So what you really do have a danger of is that nobody's really coordinating. And so it's a challenge for manufacturers. And when you think about the difference between this OT and IT, industrial control systems have many characteristics that differ from traditional IT systems. They have different risks and different priorities. And when you're thinking operational technology, like pieces of production equipment, they include significant risks to the health and safety of people, potential damage to the environment, and big financial impacts like loss of production. And industrial control systems and these operational technologies also have different performance and reliability requirements, and often use different operating systems and applications, which are unconventional when you look at traditional IT networks. So security really needs to be implemented in a way that maintains system integrity, not only during normal operations, but as well as a cyber attack. And when you look at this chart, and let's just pick the lifetime of equipment. So for traditional IT systems, your laptop, well, every year to 3 years, you might get a new laptop, and they're updated regularly. Your system updates are pushed out to you. But when you look at production equipment, these pieces could be in service for 15 to 20 years. No tolerance for delays or downtime to upgrade. And traditionally in this sector, what we found is that a lot of companies haven't made the necessary updates. Some of the pieces of equipment, if you can believe it, are still running Windows 95, which even Microsoft isn't supporting anymore. So there is a really big difference in how we approach these IT versus OT and the different threat factors that exist for both of them. And when you think of traditional industrial control system threats, the one that most of us have probably heard back in 2010 was Stuxnet, which was a nation state attack on industrial control systems. And I've just picked a few other malware and ransomware attacks that have come up over the past 10 years or so. But what this points out, and I'm going to go back to Stuxnet, is so everybody thinks, all right, well, that came out 10 years ago. We got the fix. Everything is good. Well, I got to tell you, Stuxnet is still out there. It is still being utilized by bad actors to infiltrate systems. And just because you applied the patch that was pushed out when it was first uncovered doesn't mean that, okay, now I'm good. Because guess what? The original creators of Stuxnet have also evolved and have made their own malware evolve as well. So when you're looking at cybersecurity, it is an ongoing and evolving threat. Well, the threats to the cyber systems in manufacturing. So when you look at what are the causes of an industrial cybersecurity event, the previous slide highlighted big ones, the ones we might hear about in the press. And that's definitely one of the threat vectors, the malicious activity. It could be that nation state. It could be a hacker looking to steal your information or to hold your systems ransom. It could also be a disgruntled employee that was, a little bit upset when they got let go or downsized, but still have the ability to gain access. What's interesting is about 2/3 of them are internal and human error. And I'm going to hit on this a couple times during our talk today. It's Your employees can be your best resource, your best line of defense, or they could be your greatest threat. So training them on what's acceptable behavior and what's the right protocols and how you do things is an ongoing journey. And it has to be, because if they're well trained, they can spot an anomaly or not click on something they're not supposed to. And then there is always that internal equipment failure, power supply, or other things like that that occur. So it is external, but it is internal. And so we have to look at both when we're looking to say, okay, how do we address these? So this was a survey conducted by a group called PAS earlier this year. It was a global survey, and they talked to manufacturers from the very small to the very large. And they were asked to gauge the degree of OT cybersecurity risk for several potential threats that they laid out. And here we go, big surprise. Human error was the number one. And whether that was because they weren't trained or just didn't follow procedure, it's humans, again, biggest asset, greatest threat. And then in descending order, nation states, the digital transformation, this industry 4.0, it's just creating more entry points for somebody that wants to get into our industrial ecosystem. Remote work. For this 2020, I'm going to spend a little bit more time digging down on that. And then again, the internal malicious actors. So when you look at how manufacturers are targeted and how and what sort of things they're having to deal with, the main entry point for any bad actor into an industrial company to do a cyber event is spear phishing. And most of us know what this is. You know, you get this email that says, click on this link. And, you know, years ago, you would look at this and go, okay, this is obviously not from my accounting department or from HR. But they have evolved. These threat actors have evolved. And so now when you get that email from Bob in accounting, you look at the email and it looks like Bob's email address. And then you read down and it says, Dear Rebecca, hey, we've upgraded our payroll system. Click here to make sure that we have your direct deposit information correctly. Well, of course, I want to get paid. So I click on the link, and that is the access point that the bad actor needs to get in. Because remember that OT and IT convergence. So they are now into the IT systems. And if they are tied to that production equipment, then they have access. And once they're in there, they could put in that malware, ransomware. Man in the middle is where they just sit there and watch what's going on. There was an incident where a company was going through labor negotiations and somebody had hacked into their system just to see the conversations between management about how they were going to approach the labor negotiations. So there are all reasons that that manufacturers are being targeted. So again, this survey that PAS Global did, only 12% of respondents indicated an OT cybersecurity risk is low. So they didn't really think it was a big issue. And only 15% that they are prepared for such an attack. But then they also said that 37% have experienced this cyber incident, and when or don't know that they have. And when you break that 37% down, 16 said they haven't, but 21% said they don't know if they have. And this is an issue. And traditionally, we find that once your system is penetrated, most companies do not figure it out for 6 months. So for 6 months, damage could be happening, malware, they could be stealing information. So it's a little troubling that they don't know if they have. Now, this is staggering. 85% said that they don't have an adequate asset inventory. Well, how are you going to protect your systems when you don't know what's on your network? That's like trying to build a house without a good foundation. You need to know what's on your network. And then 38% said they're taking an ad hoc or reactive approach, and only 27% are taking a proactive approach. So we're really not all that prepared. And just to give you an idea of the threats that are out there and how companies are really not even preparing themselves, this is the Shodan search engine. And what they've done is crawled the internet for protocols that provide raw direct access to industrial control systems. And what this visualization shows is the location of these industrial control systems that are connected to the internet. And so when you see the United States, for instance, and those dots there, that one dot isn't one piece of equipment. That just shows the coverage of open systems. And this means that the company hasn't changed the password that came from the factory or in some way just left it open for anybody to find. And I just should add that they put it up there as information, not as a way in. You can't click on there and get to them. So now, here, 2020, it is quite a year for all of us. And a survey was recently done that revealed that a majority of U.S. industrial enterprises have seen an increase in cybersecurity threats since the start of the pandemic. And because many manufacturing companies really haven't had experience with remote workforces, employees were not set up to be secure in the immediate shift to work from home. And so a few months have passed. Many employees continue to work from home and maybe into the future. So it's critical for companies to really look at the settings and the software and the hardware that the remote workers are using. So if your employees are on a home network, what else is connected to that network? Whether it be your Xbox, your other family members' computers, your home devices. And so those are all connected to the network where your employee's working. And maybe your employee's using their own personal devices. And so these new attack vectors that we're going to talk about here shortly, the bad actors are using, and the fact that folks are working from home creates a lot more opportunities for bad actors to get a foothold. But more importantly, it's harder for the security team in your company to detect and respond to these threats. Home networks aren't auditable like corporate networks are. So it's really creating a different environment for manufacturers this year that wasn't even in the realm of possibility last year. And so we have this new generation of cyber threats. Since the lockdown, just a couple examples. There was a targeted phishing campaign back in April against Zoom meetings. So bad actors, everybody's working from home. Everybody's using Zoom. So I'm going to use that platform for my phishing campaign. In May, 2 massive COVID-19 phishing campaigns. Again, people are nervous. People were worried. So let's put some information out saying it's COVID-19 information. Well, everybody was so eager for it. So that was very successful. In June, there was a Black Lives Matter voting campaign that was used to spread a Trojan horse. And then Honda in June had a massive network outage due to a ransomware attack. And in the summer, the FBI also warned that cyber criminals are increasingly targeting mobile banking apps. So this ACH and wire fraud. So, these are smart folks that are trying to do harm. They see that people are working from home. Well, let's go after Zoom. People are doing mobile banking because they're not in their company. So, in their banks. So there's a lot of new threat vectors that have come up that we're seeing since the pandemic. So what are manufacturers doing? This was a report that came out from Sikich, which is a security firm. And they asked, okay, what actions are you taking to enhance cybersecurity? So great. 72% said they're doing assessments. That's fantastic. You don't know where you are if you don't do those kind of assessments. Again, employee training, an incident response plan. You desperately need this. When you have a cyber incident, the last thing you want to do is just go, okay, what now? And then you can see some of the other things that manufacturers are doing. So what this really brings us to is that it has to be a whole of enterprise approach. You've got to get the organizational culture, the people, the processes, and the technology working together to see that cybersecurity is important for the whole of the company. So how do you start this journey? What should you be asking yourselves? So how are you prioritizing access versus security with or without a remote workforce? Uh, who can log in? Who can have access to production equipment from home? And how are you allowing it? Do you have two-factor authentication? And what are the risks for employees using their personal devices or their personal networks? How are we testing our own security? For those of you that are defense contractors or hope to be, there is CMMC compliance, which you're going to have in order to keep those contracts. That was supposed to come in force this fall. It got delayed, but that should be something you're spending some time on now. And then one thing we normally do not think of is, all right, so we've got our backup. So if things go wrong, we have that, but how secure is that? Do you know the security protocols for where that lives, your backups live? So to manage the risk from a corporate side, again, self-assess, audit, know your assets, know what's on your network, and look at the threats. What's out there? What should you be most afraid of? And what are going to be your security objectives to get there? And then say, okay, well, I know what's on my network. I know what my threats are. Okay, what can I do? What countermeasures can I take? And I just want to caution that, if you're working with an outside vendor, which a lot of folks do, and they say, okay, I've got your point solution, I can make everything secure for you. They can't. It is not a one vendor solution that's going to fix everything. Because some of it is, again, back to your people. You need to be able to train them. And it's an ongoing process. You can't just say, okay, well, I made myself secure in January, so I don't need to look at it again for another month. No, this is an ongoing process. So you really need to take a layered approach to this to security and get that IT and OT dialogue happening. Think about if you've got higher risk devices, maybe they shouldn't be connected to the network or in some way firewalled. I really think it's key to have two-factor authentication for any remote access, whether it's an IT system or a OT system. And again, educate, re-educate, and test those folks because you want to know that they are listening to the training that you're providing. So when you're looking for what are the three pillars of industrial control system security, it's really visibility, prevention, and continuous monitoring. Only by doing all three of these things on an ongoing basis are you going to be able to protect your company and your resources from threat. And I put these up. These are some free of charge resources that you can take advantage of. A lot of it is through the Department of Homeland Security. The Cyber Resilience Review is a self-assessment as well as specific to industrial control systems. There's this on the second line. Sign up for the advisories and the reports. So when a bad actor is identified or a control system that's been compromised is identified, you get the push out to say, okay, we've identified it. Here's the solution. Look at the CISA recommended practices, also some good information, and then the NIST Guide to Industrial Control System Security. The last one I put up there is GitHub, and this is a bit more on the technical side of things, but they have, yes, they call it Awesome Industrial Control System Security section, which has some tools there for free of charge, linked to conferences, presentations, alerts, news articles, and some training. So if through all of this you say, okay, great, now I realize just how unprotected I am. Please do not panic. It is really an opportunity for you to start some of these self-assessments, this asset inventory, and get started on your journey to be more secure. It may seem overwhelming, but doing a little bit at a time is better than doing nothing at all because you're overwhelmed. So I will pause there, see if we've got any questions, and start the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And I really like that slide that you just put up with the resources. Can we make that available to all of our viewers?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks. We do have a question. So you hear that some defense giants have had hundreds of hacking attempts each month. Is that real, or is that just kind of hyped up?
Oh, that is definitely real. It is, it is an ongoing like battle with, with these bad actors coming at you. And especially for the defense contractors, they're going after the big companies like Lockheed or Boeing. But the interesting thing is they're also going after their suppliers because they are less likely to have the resources to thwart the attacks than the big guys. Mm. And so it's like, all right, I've locked my front door, I've alarmed all my windows, but I left the cellar the cellar window unprotected because who's going to come in that way? So a lot of times they come in through the supply chain to get to the big OEMs.
Gosh, do you see any particular, you mentioned about the COVID, the increase in working at home. Do you see any particular industry that's being more hard hit than others during these times?
I don't have visibility into that, where manufacturing compares to some of the others, but I think it's got to be rampant across because, for manufacturers especially, working from home really wasn't a thing. Yeah. You had to be where the factory is. And so, and the folks in the non-production floor were still in the factory or at headquarters working. So it really was, I think, a bigger jar for our sector because it just wasn't a thing to work from home.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. Great information. And it certainly opened my eyes to the risks and the attempts that are happening that we don't even know about. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yep, and happy to, and look forward to the rest of the day.
I appreciate it. And folks, we are very excited to have both Dr. Bruce Kramer and Dr. Joseph Michaels coming up in at the top of the hour. So feel free to click on that next link. And thank you again, Rebecca, for joining us.
Absolutely.